Hey, welcome to this Life in Tech episode 179. I'm Jason.
I'm Dan.
Yes, he is. And I'm Pete there.
So, hey, Dan, I've been meaning to ask you
What's up?
because you got like that rehearsed down, the way you lean into the camera and everything. It's great, dude. So, to set up even for the layer, because you do a lot of like camera work with that, have you marked out your positions on the floor, like stage directions?
Yep.
And like, okay, did you put tape down or markers?
Yep.
Because you got it, man. Like you're in the right place at the right time. You move the right way into it.
Hey, if you're going to play the part, you've got to do a little bit of research on all the different things, so the cameras, and I don't want to go off camera. So as you're moving around, so I put tape so I know exactly where the recording, so to speak, stops when I go off camera. So
yeah.
He has his mime boundaries.
That's it. Yeah. Kind of, except they're visible.
Yeah.
Only to him.
Yeah.
So I think we left off last time talking about the farm. So I'll pick up with the farm, and maybe because some interesting articles came out this week about applying technology to livestock, like and coming from our conversation last week extensively about biohacking. And so there's like, and what I've seen in the space, they're all embeddable, like microchips. But for years now, they've had what essentially is a Fitbit that you can inject into cows. And so the idea is that this device is in the cow. It monitors some of its biosignatures, heart rate, temperature, so forth and so on, as they're out roaming. Especially in like these little small micro or what are called hobby farms like we have. Even my chicken herd, if you will, isn't that large. I mean, we're up to like 40 chickens now, something like that. But it's sizable. And so you have this issue of, well, like, how are my birds doing? And you can't always go over and get them. And I'm not a trained veterinarian, so I don't know what I'm really looking at anyway. But if you have this data feeding in, just like we talked about for us, you can kind of optimize. Or a more immediate problem, I told you guys we got these guinea fowls, right? And the first, I don't know how many we had, 10, or they just left. And so we went and got like another 10. They're gone too. So I got like another 8, but they're in the house because they're little kids.
When you say they're gone, were they eaten, or are they now eating other people's stuff? Like they decided, we don't like the Pittman farm, so we're out.
All right, so guinea fowls are like a cross between a turkey and a duck. That's what they look like, and that's their size. They're not small, and they're not okay. So like I was saying in the pre-show, if for the people that have never been around farm animals, chickens are like pretty cool. Even the roosters, man. I mean, roosters can be a little temperamental, but because we've raised all these from chicks, they recognize you more or less. And when they see you come, they come running and they like you and they're fun to be around and they chirp and you can feed them. And the chickens are great, man. Dirty. They're a little precocious, but they're pretty cool. These guinea fowl ain't having it, dude. They're mean. They're temperamental. They don't like being around you. I don't think they really like being around each other, even though they stick in a group, like a duck group. And they definitely don't like other animals. So the guinea fowl, you can eat them and you can eat their eggs, but that's not why we got them. We got them because they love eating ticks and pests that infect the garden. And we have some beetle problems. And so we looked at it and we're like, well, we could take some chickens over there, but the chickens like ain't going to be good by themselves. Let's get some guinea fowl because nothing really eats the guinea fowl because they're so mean. Like I told you guys before, we have a hawk problem. Well, we solved that. The hawk ain't going to come down and eat these guinea fowls, especially once they're full size. They're too big, they're too mean, and the hawk might lose. Right? Okay? That tells you a lot about these damn birds. The other thing, too, is like ducks, they can fly, like straight up fly, whereas chickens can fly, but they can only go like a couple feet. You know what I mean? So we put these guinea fowl in the garden, and they just flew. They just got up and flew away. And so...
So how come you don't clip their wings?
You could, but come on, man. There's like a limit to what. Why don't I declaw my cat? Because it's cruel and inhumane, in my opinion. These things are meant to fly. They like roosting up high. I don't want them stressed out. Okay, and so forth and so on, which is why we don't do it. It's a great question, but maybe some people do. I'm not going to, dude. I accept the fact that they just fucked off, man. Now this garden is on. two sides surrounded by forest. Okay, on one side, it's not fair to call it a forest. It's a tree stand because there's another property that abuts it. Okay, but it's a thick tree stand. Behind it, it's a legitimate forest that goes on for hundreds of acres. Well, think about it. These are basically ground-dwelling birds that like to roost up high. And so, what do you think they did, man? You put them in a garden. There's no ground cover for them, really. And so they look there and they're like, hey, look, there's trees, guys. Let's go. And they fucked off over the fence. And I went there this morning in the dark, right before sunrise, and I just stood on the property. And you can hear them. They're there.
They're gonna attack you when you go on one of your runs. They're gonna come down and dive bomb you.
Yeah, wow, man, these things look like, you ever see a rhea or an emu or an ostrich?
Yeah,
these are like miniature ones of those. They're just miniature, and they're mean like them too. And they're not very smart at all. If chickens are dumb, these things are twice as dumb. So they just whatever, dude. But you can hear them. I heard them clear as day, man. They have a very distinctive call, and they're very loud.
Were they plotting against you?
What's that?
Were they plotting against you?
I don't know what they were saying.
You said you heard them.
Yeah.
Cross chatter, like, making sure they're not going to tear you up.
So we got I think another 8, but these are chicks. They're too small to let out. So that's where we came up. Mrs. Pittman and I were talking about, well, should we chip these things, right? Even just get some cheap RFID tags that at least you can read in a near field communication, and just kind of keep an idea where these things are at. Because, man, look, I ain't got a lot of neighbors, but I got some neighbors. And if there's a herd of, there's like 20 of these things roaming around, somebody's going to probably get upset. Now, they don't eat your lawn. I mean, they're kind of cool because they eat all the ticks. We didn't have a lot of frost this year, so the ticks are actually really bad. I don't know. That's where I'm at. So I've been thinking about
do the ticks adversely affect the chickens?
I don't know, man. I don't know if the ticks we have. I would bet they go on to the chickens because they're warm blooded, right?
Yeah.
But we've had a lot on us. You just see them crawling, you crush them. Interesting enough, I've seen a lot crawling into the house.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and
that's problematic.
Yeah, and so my house isn't next to the forest, and I don't keep tall grass near me. So the ticks are pretty active and looking for hosts. That's how you know it's kind of a problem. Now we're fortunate because the breed we have aren't high carriers of spotted fever or Lyme disease, either or. So it's not a big deal. Like my daughter had one, I had a pool, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would imagine, from no different than how we're using wearables. Mm-hmm. By putting a wearable on any of your livestock, at a minimum, other than knowing where they might be. If one starts to get sick, you could separate it from the rest, so that way you don't lose your entire flock.
Yeah, there's all kinds of little interesting optimization use cases. Like that's a thing, man. Especially with fowl, they get sick and they can spread disease pretty fast because they're all cloistered up too. Especially when we get into fall and winter and they're in that coop more. At least now they get out and they spread around. But even optimization of breeding cycles, right? I mean, we do that with humans. We can optimize our breeding cycles based on taking temperature and tracking things. The egg laying is a big deal for us because that's why at least half our chickens are here. They're here to produce eggs for us. And so optimizing their environment so that they maximally produce is kind of important, man. So then it becomes a kind of a cost-benefit analysis. Like, how much am I willing to invest in the technology to chip these things, along with the technology to analyze all the data, such that it's actually beneficial? I don't know where that cutoff point is yet, but that's what's interesting.
Well, if you assume a dozen of organic eggs can go anywhere between $4 and $6 at a store, but they've already been heavily pasteurized and like that. If you're looking for that, farm to table aspect of it. Are we getting into that, what is commercially available? And if it's a little bit more expensive, am I willing to pay for having that, the farm to table is literally as quickly as I can walk across that massive land to go get my eggs.
Right.
Well, to me, the breaking point is going to be when it's no longer fun and it feels like work.
Right. You know what I would find interesting from the biohacking of animals, right? Is you basically there's you're when you talk about cattle and us eating beef, there's three basic kind of frames that you eat. It's big old grain-fed animals that are largely locked up, free roaming, free range. What we like is organic farm to table animals, right? I mean, there's a butcher shop here that no animal they get is more than 100 miles away from, where it's basically processed, and it's minimally invasive. And the butcher shop is small enough that, like, if you want steaks, you better call ahead and make sure they got a cow that week and not a pig.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're that concerned about that. And it's part of what makes them great. And then third, the Wagyu Kobe style cattle. Right. Mm-hmm. And I always find it to be, I find it humorous, but not in a funny way, when they talk about the Kobe / Wagyu experience, where they get massaged 3 times a day, they're getting beers and everything like that, and they have a great life. And I'm like, yeah, whatever the point and you end it for them, right? And it's like, it's the difference between being in a like Rikers Island or some low end prison, and then going to death row, or they're going to put you up at the Waldorf Astoria and then kill you at the end. Right. Right. The result's all the same. So I need a spandex jumpsuit if I'm a Kobe cow, because I'm going to get fat and I'm going to enjoy what time I have left on the planet. But I'd love to see that from a biohacking perspective of, what all the functions of this animal look like. And it'd be the same with humans, right? That, I had somebody reason not a non-U.S. citizen say, and it's completely true, because the U.S. is the only country where our poor people are overweight, right? where they have the ability to eat enough of low quality food to be obese. And so if you were to biohack that, you were to biohack your average middle class American, and then you were to biohack somebody who is unbelievably concerned about what they eat, what they put in their body, and is eating what is, generally to believe to be the most nutritious and fitness conscious way to eat. What do those three people look? What are those graphs of mapping the same functions? What does that look like over time?
Right.
Cows would be cool.
And I think you can go a bit deeper, which is kind of what I was thinking about. You can take that, and then you can also take the idea of, like, one of the things I think about with the chickens is, like, I'm producing these mealworms, right? And the mealworms are going to be their exclusive food for the most part for the winter. And so I have an opportunity to biohack the mealworms so that I'm engineering the food for the chickens that I know that is in turn going to be consumed by me. And so you have this chain of optimization that, if you're aware of all the things we've been talking about for weeks, right? Your own genetic makeup, what nutrients are best for your situation based on your goals, and you can engineer that into your food, whether it's the vegetable garden or the protein or the eggs, right? The muscle-based protein or the egg protein. Man, you can actually do a lot with not that much, man. I mean,
right. Well, but if you listen to the big vegan argument about proteins, right? From a just a generalist view about proteins, non-animal based proteins are viewed to be incomplete from an essential amino acid base and a bunch of other things. And so if you're going to do the vegan thing, then you've got to supplement with creatine. You've got to make sure you get essential amino acids and things like that, so that you have a complete nutrition chain, so to speak.
Right.
And the vegan argument is, cows, for example, eat grass. They don't eat other things. They're not, cows are herbivores, right? And so they eat that, or we feed them grain. But if you're talking about organic grass-fed cattle, they're going to eat that. They process it, and then we get the benefit. And this is where kind of the wheels come off the cart. Knowing what I know now, we get the benefit from what they've eaten. Right. And really what you're trying to minimize, in cutting the cow out and going right to the vegetable plant-based proteins, is heme iron and a couple other what are considered to be radicals for the human body.
Right.
But that, it's just, to me, that's an interesting thing. If you're going to say, like you said, I want to talk about what I'm putting in my body. Can I engineer a cow better to reduce some of those radical elements that'll be in there? And what's the efficacy of that?
Right. Yeah. And I would suspect, this is a guess, I don't think I need to go massage my chicken multiple times a day.
Your chickens may like it.
Dan's face. I don't think I need to go massage my chickens multiple times a day. But can for
don't get to any S&M aspects of that chicken either.
Hey man, I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
See, there's the art of being subtle in your humor, and then there's Dan.
But I think we can optimize over time how we move their coop around, the cycles, their exposure to certain things in the environment, certainly their food and the substrates and stuff like that. Because here's another thing too, don't forget, a big part of these chickens, which is why we're essentially free ranging them, is because they'll go through and poop over everything. And that's a fantastic fertilizer.
Yeah.
Well, this is where if you started getting into, making beer, so a lot of these farmers, they would take those grains from the beer and then they would throw that out into the, for the chickens as well. So that way nothing ever went to waste. Others would take it and make it into what's called hillbilly bread, and make bread from it, because it still has plenty of the nutrients to do so. But yeah, throw out that stuff and.
Right. And then see, this is where you start getting into how can you optimize a small, I call it a hobby farm or micro farm, into more like a permaculture setup.
Right.
And so that's why we've started talking about ways to do things where it more stabilizes our environment. So like one of the things we have now with the chickens is they like to eat certain plants, but you got to have those plants planted and sustainable in the fields so that they keep growing year after year, and you don't have to really, because this is the big thing. The margins aren't very big, and so you can't put a lot of labor into this shit, right? Because the more time you spend on it and the more you're putting into it, you're eating into whatever small profit you maybe will make. Maybe, okay? And so you can do things like, one of the next steps is talking about honeybees and getting the honeybees, not only because they'll keep other pests out, but they'll pollinate the garden and the plants out in the fields that we need for the chickens over time. And if we scale up to hogs and goats, which is likely. And I got these roaming armies of guinea fowls, which, they're supposed to just eat insects, but if there ain't no insects, what are they eating? So you kind of need something for the insects to come and live in. Tall grass, right? That's a good idea. And so you get this like little ecosystem that you can kind of manage, but you can't really manage it. You can optimize it, but it's going to do what it does because of the environment. And I find that really interesting. It's really interesting to me.
Look, let's be honest about your, getting into the bees aspect. You just want to make meat, right? Yeah. So let's not mistake anything.
No. There's lots of benefits out of it, man. Well, and I'll tell you, dude, I'm not a big dessert person, but one of the things I really like is dark chocolate melted over honeycomb. Holy God, is that good? That's a nice little treat once in a while, man.
Well, I also think, it's one of those, we have dermatologists, we have immunologists, we have all these, and you go in and, you're an allergist, you take a child and, they're allergic to grass, they're allergic to this, they want to shoot them up with stuff. No, get them out in the grass. Let them build, certainly the COVID thing, right? Let's build up some herd immunity. And this is the first time in human history where we haven't said, hey, this thing's not lethal, but for a very small group of people. So let's protect those people and let's get everybody out and about to get a handle on this. Honey for allergies I think it's the golden key to unlock things. But
absolutely.
But you have to get it locally. Because when you start talking about allergies, every allergy is what's within the kind of the ecosystem you live in. You could get those honeybees that are living on your property and like that. If the folks within your little ecosystem, within your neighborhood, so to speak, and that's a little bit bigger than a mile or two, you have the ability to start at a very low level, immunizing yourself, for lack of a better word, against those allergies and doing it. Because what are immunizations about? In the most part, it's about giving your body a manageable amount to let your body figure out, hey, here's how we're going to defend against this.
That's right.
It's nothing else, right? It's not
absolutely true.
It's not rocket science, right? I mean, we cracked the code on this, and I think is with most, and it's just the world we live in the U.S. in particular. As with most kind of homeopathic, I would say, or old school, farmer's almanac type cures, as we were, there's no money in it for big medicine, for big pharma, right?
No, of course.
We've made HIV chronic, right? So now you can take a pill for it, and it's not communicable, and it's you can't spread it anymore. So when you halt the spread of the disease and you halt the effects, you now give me a pill, right? And it goes back to what I always say: most people want an easy button anyway. Most people would much rather not change their lifestyle and live the life that they want to live, even if it's detrimental to them,
right?
And then search around for the easy button, right? And whatever that looks like, right? And I can't, especially, and I think, there's something to be said for rural America in that point, right? Where it becomes difficult. I can't just drive out and go down to the big store.
Right.
That might be 20, 30, 50 miles away, depending on how rural you are, especially when you're farming and things like that, right? So how do I get what I need? How do I protect myself and my family? And how do I do it, like you said, as cost effectively as possible? Because the margins on small to medium-sized farms aren't massive. And especially because big pharma is actively hedging against what I believe hedging against organic farmers and local farmers, right? Because it's not in their best interest to, ConAgra, all the others that, hey, there's big industrial farming, right? It's economies of scale. Right? That's why our chickens are largely grain fed, and until recently, stuffed with antibiotics. Why? Because the margins still aren't that great. But if I can keep a chicken alive, like that's all they're really trying to do, I can chop it up and sell its meat, without regard to what the next person in that food chain, a human consumer, is putting in their body.
Yeah.
But I think there's have we reached? And I don't think we have yet. Have we reached a tipping point where the majority of consumers are saying, I don't want X, Y, and Z in my food?
Right.
People, I don't care. If organic's $5.99 and a pound, and the non-organic's $3.99 a pound, that's perfect. I can get more of this for the same price. Well, more of.
And one of the things I like about this area, and so we got into gardening years and years ago. We always had a little small one, even in California. But it was just something to do, and it gave you a little bit of food. It's turned into a way to be independent. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, and have a little alternative and right revenue stream potentially down the road once different aspects get ramped up. And it's a big part of it too, is teaching our daughter, like, well, look, this is what you're capable of. You don't have to choose to do it. I mean, I'm indifferent to it. But this is what you can do. Look at all the things you can produce if you just put a little labor into the earth and the area you live in. One of the things I like is, I mean, I live in a rural part, but dude, it ain't like it used to be. You know what I mean? This ain't the 1800s. Like, I'm 20 minutes from downtown Winston-Salem. I can go to the big city if I want to. But our local supermarket right here, which is a chain food line, sources almost all of its stuff from local farms. And so the family farm that we're all part of produces the hay that feeds the livestock that gets butchered and goes in there. So we're basically eating meat that's grown here, and kind of, it's almost like an extended community because of the way the system works. And I kind of like that, man. There's something, the older I get, the more I kind of like that. It's not a commune in that sense, but there's an ecosystem of people that are loosely coupled and loosely depend on one another. And we've all kind of figured out how to play a part in that. I like that.
Well, the part, for like even the stuff what I'm looking at doing with, the distillery, which, eventually goes, everything I'm looking at doing is basically local and to give back to the local. To the extent of I'll be employing open book financing. So that way everyone in the company can see exactly what things are going on, because I want to teach all of them also how to do finances and to get it to a point where they understand how to run a business. And then I'm training them to be leaders at each aspect of what they're doing. So when they leave, they are in a much better place than keeping everything in the community, things locally sourced. I'm not looking to, I won't even sell any of my products to big chains. It will be local independents. If you're not like, because I want to keep things in the community, because that way we can be sustaining. It's about creating a sustained business environment where I constantly have people and product that are constantly being churned through in terms of a roadmap.
Well, and there's a lot of interesting what I'll say are low tech but tech solutions. Like if you look at our gardening, right? We've now for the second year, going on our third year, had these two gardens where one is a vertical hydroponic system and one is a traditional in-ground system. And man, there's a massive difference. There's a massive difference in what I'm able to yield out of those systems. The hydroponic vertical system is way better. I get so much kale now this summer that I've kind of refined my method from last year, and I didn't have a beetle problem in it. I've actually started to give kale away just because I can't eat all of it, dude. And some of it goes to the chickens because they like it. It's just, man, I have, the big liter-sized Ziploc bags. My fridge is constantly full of those, full of kale. There's just kale and kale, which I like, man. I eat kale all the time. And in the ground, man, dude, it's hard to get stuff to grow. It's really hard for a variety of reasons. And so even something that's low tech, but tech, like this vertical system, because it's self-contained, right? The tub collects water, and I have a pump that runs off of a battery, which is charged by solar. And so it's self-controlled, right? Like that's perfect because it's vertical, so I don't have to walk acres, which is labor intensive, right? It's self-contained, so I don't have to put the labor into maintaining it past the initial setup. And the yield is high. The yield's high. So you can do little things like that. Oh, the big thing too is it takes up like a fifth of the space.
Oh yeah,
because it's vertical.
Hey, so let's go back to the mead for a second, because it was just coming back with an idea. Because I like mead, but I've never actually made mead yet. So with the mead that you like, are they adding any herbs to the ones that you like, or is it just straight? Because I just was looking at different recipes. They're saying a lot of people will add fruit to the mead, stuff like that, in order to give it the hint. So
I personally don't like that. The brand I like that I drink a lot, I shouldn't say a lot. The brand I get and drink has, let's say, flavors available in their brand line. Mm-hmm. I like just the straight honey one.
Which one is that?
I drink what's called Chaucer's mead. Chaucer, like the author, CHAUCER apostrophe S.
Got it.
That's the one I really like.
Because I might as well, get it prepared basically now, but for New Year's, I'm just going to have a batch of mead ready as well.
It's my understanding. I've not produced any myself, but my understanding it's really simple.
Oh yeah, it's just like making beer. The only difference is you only have really three ingredients: water, honey, yeast, and then whatever you want to put into it. So it's just like in the process is basically the same. You've got to get it in order to get the honey to an aspect to where it is where the yeast can really get into it. You're just keeping it at 160 degrees for about 45 minutes, into the water solution, and then it's how fast can you cool it to under 90 degrees, so that way you don't kill the yeast. And then a week later, it's ready to. It's drinkable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even like into the yeast, one of the things I always really liked, and I actually for a long time fantasized about doing a career as a microbiologist. I love microbiology. And years ago when Marsha and I were just dating, we were somewhere and we did a tour of a brewery. And man, I went off the tour because I just got curious. And I ended up talking to a microbiologist for a long time about how that, and it's a major brewery, maintains their yeast lines and optimizes them and kind of biohacks them to produce maximally and optimally. But there's a lot that goes into that. There's generations of yeast that are maintained because they have optimal properties.
Yep, and it's just like, for those people that are like, pitching the yeast for bread.
Yeah.
You're constantly having to leave that, and it's the same way. I mean, I've gotten into actually with the beer that I made when you were out here last, that vanilla bourbon barrel stout. That was local yeast, the yeast that I basically just captured right out of the out of the air and the outside, and then just get enough of it to where then I could it would produce the beer.
Yeah.
When you talk about yeasts now, it's two big things. One is pizza dough, and the other one is sourdough bread. And not just the yeast, but it's the whole sourdough process. Like some of the best, most highly coveted artisan sourdoughs, their yeast lines are decades, if not longer, old. And there's just a little piece that goes in each one, and it's like how I what's that process to mix the old with the new to guarantee you I can continue that taste line more than anything else.
Yeah. So mead, the production of the mead is probably going to end up being very similar, because for quite some time I produced my own kombucha tea, which is fermented tea. It's a very similar process. Man, and past getting your initial colony, they call it a Scooby setup. And like me with kombucha tea, I just like straight black tea. I didn't put anything in it. I didn't add any flavoring, anything. I just like the straight bitter black tea experience. I did a green tea one once, but I didn't like it. Man, I just grew it in my kitchen, put it in a shady corner on the kitchen counter. I watched the temperature, to optimize it a little bit. And I used like an aquarium temperature gauge, the ones you stick on the outside of an aquarium, the little sticker. It's really low key, dude. Super, super cheap. I had kombucha tea for a long time until we moved.
Funny, I love my tea with nothing else in it. But with coffee, I prefer, adding stuff to coffee, but except Turkish coffee. Turkish coffee, I don't want to add anything to it either. I like it just just
that right there explains why my mustache is so heavy and thick and yours isn't, because I drink my coffee black.
Well, Val Kilmer's was like this. And it might be the space that you've got between your nose and the upper part of your mouth.
And just like that.
Hey, man. But yeah, there's a lot of little cool projects you can do. And this is where I think the makerspace, like Arduinos, open IoT devices, sensors and stuff, prices have stabilized. They're not terribly expensive. I'll tell you one of the things I've really considered adding to my little office here that I don't have that could be very useful is a decent 3D printer. There's a lot of small little things that I could 3D print for use around the farm or the garden that, man, probably over time would save me a lot.
Well, plus it feeds both things. It feeds your passion and technology and how to, and doing that maker stuff, as it were. And then there's a practical application for what you're doing, right?
Right.
Which that's ultimately like when you're a thinker and a developer and things like that. It's like, I can go out and make anything just because I think it's cool in the process. Right? You get involved in the process, right? And I think when most people are successful and fulfilled in life, they've created a process, or they've been through a process that gets them to something that has a purpose at the end. And for developers and people like that, it's like, hey, I can go develop anything. I think like right now, for the money, like those little nut computers, they're fascinating to me, right? And I have a friend I gave one to not unconsciously 8 years ago. I had gotten one for free from Intel. When I was at another company, they gave a bunch of them to us. And all of a sudden their computer died one day, and he called me. He's like, hey, can you come over and fix it? Well, I fixed it by giving him a nut computer because I didn't want to take the time to go troubleshoot what was actually wrong with their other machine.
Right.
And they still have that machine now. And I got a call that they were trying to do dual monitors. And I go, well, the only reason it can't support dual monitors is because the device itself is so old, it just wasn't built to do that. Right. And so I started looking up, what it would cost to replace one. And you can go at the low end at $200, $300, but even at the top end for under $800, $900, i7, 10th generation quad core processor with 32 gigs of RAM, great graphics card, and multiple outlets, and it'll support multiple.
Good gosh, what are you doing with 32 gigs of RAM?
I know, but I'm not advocating that you get, but I'm just saying if you just look what you can get for the cost, as opposed to it. I mean, like I said, I'd go get something with 16 gigs of RAM, right, and killer processor, a good graphics card in it, and it's probably $500-$600. And how many don't have monitors sitting around your house now that are either aren't doing anything or underutilized?
Oh yeah,
right.
So funny enough, so I was actually curious because my son Bryce wants to go back and play this online game, and I'm like, okay, I don't have anything with me, but we've got his computer here, so his stuff can handle. I'm like, so I've got my Surface Book, which is about 2 years old right now, and it's only got 8 gigs of RAM in it. So I was like, all right, well, let me see what it's compatible with in terms of playing the game. Oh, it's got the graphics card in here. It's also a 4 gigs graphics card, and so it plays the game with him like no problem. I'm going, holy shit! Like I remember when I had to buy like a laptop when I was playing a bunch of games with the kids, and I was traveling all the time, so I could still keep connected. I bought this Alienware laptop, and it cost like $3,500. And I've got the Surface Book, which I think it cost like $1,600 2 years ago, and I didn't even I didn't buy it for the graphics card. I bought it for doing my schoolwork. And so I'm like, holy shit, this thing is powerful. Didn't even realize.
I'll show you. Hold on. One of the things I've been playing with is this is a Pi 4.
Yeah.
And so this is like $40. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
But you want to talk about a computer that can run a farm because of just how low power almost everything is that I want to deploy across the farm. And it's resilient and it's kind of disposable for $30. It's not a huge investment for me for a hobby farm. 1 or 2 of these deployed around can run a shitload of sensors, and they integrate directly with Arduinos, which I have. Because for me, it's a simple thing. Like the garden is far enough away that, it's a good walk to it and back. Do I want to go over there every night and check on it, especially with these guinea fowls running amok? No, man. I can deploy a little sensor now. You know what I mean?
Especially at night. They're probably already developing tactics against you. They're waiting for you to come out at night. You can't see them.
Well, hey, listen, man. No bullshit. You know what we do have around
here now? Because look, they're going to try to eat. They're going to try to eat that caterpillar on your lip there.
I'll tell you. In the early morning and at night, what I have been concerned about a little bit running on the trails here is for the last few weeks, people on their Nest cameras and shit have been capturing. There's a cougar. There's probably at least 2 of them roaming around. I don't know that this is in their territory. I think they're kind of crossing through because they've been out during the day, like in people's front lawns and shit. It's no joke. What's that?
They're getting bold.
Yeah. And so either they're bold because they're hungry or they're bold because they're just trying to get through onto the next place in their territory. I don't know which. But, dude, that's no joke. I would much rather have to fight a bear if I had to, than a cougar. I don't want a big, giant cat stalking me. Like, it's not on my bucket list, dude.
Neither one of those are grand options.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest asking the cougar which it's doing either. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, man. No.
I mean, if you're worried about your guinea fowl, just saying, the cougar's at another level.
Hey, listen, there's a reason why it took an asteroid to get rid of the dinosaurs. The mammals weren't getting the job done. I'm not worried about these birds, dude. I'm not worried about them. I mean, but my point is that there's little low-cost ways that you can deploy technology. Or like, I have an electronic door for the chicken coop. Because, listen, human beings are fallible. Outsmart yourself. Somebody's not going to go over there and either close the door so raccoons are going to get in, which is disastrous, or they're not going to open the door in the morning, which means the chickens aren't going to get out and it's going to cause problems. So I just said up front, let's be smart. Why do you want to put yourself in a position where now you can't go on vacation? All this little stuff that people don't think about. Put a fucking electronic door on there. And I have a little solar panel that I had left over from the first version of the garden. And bang, it's done. And yeah, sometimes not all the chickens make it in. Okay.
It's a life lesson.
That's right. I mean, not everybody can make it, bro. I'm
So when
okay
you
with that.
So are you finally going to go out and get your gun so you can go back running, and you're just going to strap it on the back and hike just in case you see this cougar?
No, man. No.
Jeez, that's all you need is Elmer Fudd with track shoes. Right? It's like freeze.
No, this is the thing. Say, okay, listen, man, work this out. A bear is going to be there. It's on your level, okay, and it's not stalking you from above. So you're going to see it. You might like step in front of it around a corner or something, but I can deal with that. It's in my space. Like a dog, I can deal with that. It's in my space. I'm not saying I'm going to win. I'm not saying I'm going to go around killing bears with a knife like Brad Pitt in Legends of the Fall. I don't have fantasies about it. I don't want it to happen, but mentally I can deal with that. When you're dealing with a big cat, dude, you're not going to see the thing coming. It's like a great white shark. That's why I don't swim in the ocean. I don't like big great white sharks, or at least the Pacific. You see what I'm saying? Because you ain't going to see it coming, and I don't want that thing on me. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with a giant cat. I don't like the little cat I have. He's a bastard. They're mean. They're mean. They're cunning. They're crafty. And I love this little cat. You guys know his name's Mr. Pirate because my daughter picked him out. She wanted him to be Mr. Pirate. That's his name. This is the only person in the house that every morning greets me and wants to like get petted, and he's nice and he purrs. So I give him a little bit of respect for that. But he's also a bastard because he's a cat, and cats can't help themselves. They want to pounce. They want to eat things. And so just scale that up. Instead of like 10 pounds, now this thing's 200, 300, 400 pounds. And I don't want to deal with, I don't ever want to be around that. Like my daughter wants to go to the zoo and see the tigers. Bro, I don't want to be on the side of the glass from the tigers. That's too close. He went to San Diego, has that open animal safari park, right? Near the zoo. And we used to go there. And they had this little thing where they would get this cheetah and they would run it real fast, like on every hour on the top of the hour or something, right? And the fence is only like chest high. And I'm like, dude, no way. Do you think that thing can't hop out of there? Are you crazy? Like,
so like,
I don't know if I've shared this with you guys. I might not. I might have done it offline. But so years ago, I have a friend of mine. He was a SEAL, enlisted SEAL, got out, and this is back in the 70s. He got out and then went to college, came back in, wanted to be a SEAL officer. Well, at the time, late 70s, early 80s, they were like, we don't need any more officers. We're full up. So he goes to now he wants to come back in the Navy, goes to the aviation community and said, what do you got? And so they're like, well, you can fly. And he figured out as a former SEAL, whatever, he'd be flying helicopters. He ends up flying F-14s. Flying around over, I think, Beirut back, that tells you how long ago it was, in the 80s. And he goes, planes on autopilot, flying in circles, and he's writing letters home to his wife. He's like, it's a boring job, right? And so it was boring because he was doing it himself, right? There was no team aspect to it, right? Mm-hmm. So finally he walks in, throws his wings on the CAG's desk and says, and he has his trident back on, and he says, send me back where I belong. Well, he wanted to come to the East Coast because he grew up as an East Coast guy. I said, the only thing we have is on the West Coast. He's like, I'll take it, right? And it's like anything to get in, because eventually he knew 2 years later he'd have the opportunity to move. So one Saturday he's on the quarterdeck in the lobby of SEAL Team 1, and in the afternoon he gets a call. Doesn't know anybody, right, yet, because he's the new guy, and it's the San Diego police, and they've got 2 young lads in custody, right? And he's like, do you guys have these guys belong to you? And he has to go. He doesn't know anybody by name really, so he's got to go. If the commanding officer got arrested, he'd probably know who that was. But other than that, he didn't know anybody, right? And so he's got to look on the roster. He's like, "Yep, we got him." And he starts talking to him. And he's like, "Can you come pick him up at this precinct? Here's where it's at." And everything like that. He goes, "Yeah, we'll get somebody out there." And he goes, "By the way, what'd they do?" Right? So at the end of it, he goes, they were in the San Diego Zoo inside the zebra exhibit, and they were drunk and they were riding the zebras. Right? Well, that's not the funny part, because the statement from the police officer is the funny part. He goes, apparently those psychological barriers for the animals only work one way. Yeah. Because they weren't keeping drunk SEALs out of the exhibit, right? And that's when he knew he was back. One of the big reasons he hated being out in the fleet was in the early 80s was tough. There was still a large large population of junior enlisted people living on-base housing or living in on-base housing. And so there were a lot of problems with that, social problems, domestic type stuff and everything like that. And he was a family services officer for the squadron. And it almost broke him, like having to, like every day, he didn't have to go home for dinner for a long time because every night he was dealing with some domestic thing. And it was, the Navy's grown and changed the demographic, and largely those problems are mitigated. But that was one of the big reasons. And his statement was, he goes, at least when young SEALs get in trouble, they're creative. Right? So anytime somebody talks about psychological barriers for animals, I always think they only work one way.
Yeah.
Because can you just imagine two dudes like just jumping across the barrier and getting on a bareback on a zebra, trying to hold on and ride it around, right?
So this is how Mike Tyson is the baddest man on the planet, because that dude had tigers and he let them and he swam in them in their swimming pool. And he, like the picture, I don't remember which one it was on, maybe Sports Illustrated, where he's basically wearing a loincloth doing his Captain Morgan pose, the tiger on a leash swimming in his swimming pool.
Yeah.
Was it Chris Rock? He's like, with that, like that tiger there. That tiger went crazy. No, that tiger went tiger.
Yeah.
Right.
And here's Mike Tyson with tigers. So I don't know if you ever heard his thing on the Joe Rogan podcast when he's talking about it. He's like, how did you get a tiger? He's like, well, I was in jail and I'm talking to my car broker, and the car broker tells me about how one of his other clients traded in a car for some horses. And I'm like, wow, I think I might want a horse. He's like, well, what can I get for some of my cars? He's like, well, you can get anything you want. You can get like a tiger, you get this. He said, oh, tiger. Like, how many tigers can I get for this Rolls Royce? So when he gets out of jail, he comes home and he's got two tiger cubs.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then they asked him, like, hey, what happened to your tiger? He's like, oh, they got too big for my stuff, so I had to get them onto like a conservation. But he had them for like 14 years.
There are more tigers in captivity in Texas than there are anywhere else in the world. That's true. And like private collection, people buy tigers and whatever, man.
Hey,
no,
I just want a wolverine.
Sure.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you want a wolverine.
Yeah,
sure. I can deal with. It's on the ground. It's in my space.
Have you gotten a big maize and blue M tattooed on you anywhere yet?
No, but look, you all got to understand. The ice age is coming, and these polar bears are going to come down. And so I'm just being proactive. The wolverine will take down the polar bear.
There's been a lot of instances they've recorded now with polar bears mixing with grizzlies, with brown.
Oh yeah, barren ground grizzlies is what they're called.
Yeah. No
what
thanks.
Color are they? Beige?
Huh?
They're beige. I mean, look, what do we?
Oh, let's put it this way: they're highly aggressive and highly intelligent, and they will. I've seen some of the stuff.
I don't know if this gentleman's still doing the same job, but it's got to be almost 20 years ago because I've been retired for 15 now. We were trying to go up to Alaska, up at Fort Greely, which is up by Fairbanks in the Yukon Triangle. And even in the summertime, you have to worry about ice flows in the rivers if you want to use boats. We wanted to shoot from water to land, and so the day we drive onto the base, we're trying to find where range control is, because this guy runs range control and all the ranges that are on that base. He's an old retired SEAL, Vietnam era guy. At the time, he was in his 50s and he looked like he was 300 years old. Just lived a hard life, right? And in typical SEAL fashion, his wife is a former Miss Alaska. She likes hunting and fishing more than they do, and they're just a great family, right? But when you land at the airport in Fairbanks, there's a massive grizzly bear there that is stuffed on just one of these things, and it's in black sand, and so you can't touch it. And it was killed by this guy. Well, on the same trip, he got shot by the bear. Basically, he shot the bear and he didn't drop it. So now the bear's pissed off because it got shot, and it starts taking it out on him, and picking him up, throwing him around, and everything like that. Well, his buddy's like one of these numbers, trying to figure out how to Elmer Fudd the bear, and ends up shooting him as well. He gets part of his foot mauled off, like one of these things. But the dude survives, and and he's just so happy because that's just his environment. He loves living out there. He loves hunting and all like that. And it's that concept. Like when you say you don't want to mess with it, it's like you have no desire to mess with Mother Nature. It's really what you're saying. Like there's a limited. I'm going to modify it to help myself out on the farm and stuff like that. When it really comes down to it, I don't want to mess with Mother Nature, and it's a wholly different thing. One of the reasons I spent so much time on the water in my adult life is because there were times you had to go out and it was really bad. And you start to realize how insignificant you are in totality, right? When you're in a boat, you're hauling it, and all of a sudden you look in all directions and all you can see is water. Like when you're going out and you see a big cargo ship, 1,000 feet long, as tall as those things can be, and you dip down in between two waves and you can't see that ship anymore. You are now at Mother Nature's mercy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's so many people, and it's why they put that crap on television, right? Shark, where you're like, like you said, somebody jumping in in shark infested waters, right? It's surfing. Mm-hmm. Right? When sharks get aggressive when they're, it's surfing. Why? Because on a surfboard, when you're paddling, you appear to be food. And I remember we had in SEAL training, you run up and down the beach in San Diego, and every cadence song you're singing while you're running is about being a tough guy against these big animals, right? And it's one of them's about, you're in the water, you're gonna hit the shark, you're gonna punch him in the nose and do anything like that. And one of the instructors just stops us. We're in the middle of a run. And the only reason I remember the story is because I saw this guy a couple of weeks ago, right? He's a friend of mine. And every time I see him and I think of this, like he stops and he's like, hold on, wait a second. So you guys are telling me the shark comes up to you, you're gonna punch him in the nose and hope he drives off and goes up. He goes, no, you're not. He goes, that's why I give all of you knives. I don't have to swim faster than everybody. I just got to swim faster than my swim buddy. I'm going to take that knife. I'm going to stab him, and I'm swimming off. Let the shark, it creates this, it's like this plane of reality, right? How much am I willing to mess with Mother Nature?
Right.
And that's, when you start talking about people being aggressive, and go ahead, do that. Right. I mean, you give me a high powered rifle and a deer, it's not a sport. Right. That's where people go to bows and arrows. And that's why some less than intellectually gifted friends of mine, they will hunt wild boar with big ass knives. Right. And I'm like, okay, the tusks are what's going to get you with that wild boar.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
Don't miss.
You better get right the first time, because if you don't, you're going to get chewed up, and he's not going to chew on you. He's going to tusk you to death.
Yeah.
Just rip your flesh up.
Well, right? And then it'll eat you after you're dead.
Right. But it's going to mess with you on the way down.
Yeah.
And, but you look at society. I mean, people say, hey, we're soft today. Well, there's, every one of us has read the tweet where you just want to put your hand in your head, where, some animal activist is like, I don't hunt my animals. I get mine from the grocery store. Right? Because you're just not thinking far enough back, right? Because we don't, as a nation. I mean, when I was a little kid in rural Virginia, kids would bring their BB guns to school for show and tell. Can you imagine if you did that now? It'd be on the nightly news, and the parents would be like, we have to figure out why we don't lock the parents up. Right. And but it wasn't about why do people get BB guns now, right? Like largely either to teach your kids how to be responsible gun owners, or you don't want to kill the varmint, you just want to make it uncomfortable for them to be on your property, right? And so you're trying to find a middle ground. But when you start thinking about like why people do what they do, some of the last challenges you have in life are to mess with Mother Nature or mess with animals that are out of your weight class.
Right.
Right? They don't. Yeah. Not everybody has to have opposable thumbs to mess with you.
No.
Right?
No.
If you really want to see what a bear can do, go find a big one that's stuffed and put your paw print up against theirs and see what can really happen.
Yeah, it puts it in perspective.
Hey, so Jason, would you go down in to a shark tank, like in a cage, and go down and get into the water?
I thought about it, man. When we were in Hawaii years and years and years ago, you could go out and they would drop a shark cage, and then I don't know how they got the sharks to come around, I guess, but they did.
Chum.
I don't know if it's legal, man, but I don't know anything about it. I thought about it. I think I would do it. I think in the right circumstances, if I was with the right people, I'd probably.
So you trust that more than the caged tiger?
He's talking about psychological barriers for
Yeah.
animals and not believing truly that if an animal got agitated enough.
Oh no, but Jason had said, he's like, I don't even want to go to the zoo. That glass is not enough for that tiger in me.
Right.
But the shark in the cage.
Yeah. Well, because I'm the one in the cage in the shark cage, right?
Yeah.
And presumably I can control when I'm coming in and out. You know what I mean? So it's a little different. No, man. No, I don't. Look, this is the thing.
You know, they did that with Jaws, and Jaws broke that thing, and then the thing just kept falling. So you may not necessarily be able to get out.
I know, man. And listen, it's such an irrational fear for me. But have you seen the new? There's a couple of them called 47 Meters Down or something like that. Dude, I watched like the first 10 minutes of that, and I had to turn it off. Too much. No thanks. Okay, so but because like I think about it and I think it through, and there's not a lot of scenarios in which I'm going to come out. There's no scenario in which I'm coming out unscathed. There's a very few that I'm going to come out of it probably alive. And so I think about these things and think about things I want to do. And like, I'm talking about hiking the Appalachian Trail. Well, you're going to get exposed to Mother Nature in all kinds of ways. And so I think about these things like, okay, like if somebody's dog got loose, I could probably take a dog. I think I could do it. And I think about how to do it and all this jazz. I think about, what if I come across a black bear? They're not super aggressive. They're kind of pussies, and I could probably just yell at it and it'll run away. What if I come across a big brown bear? That's a bigger problem. And it scales up, and then I'm like, this cougar's roaming around. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to deal with that. There's just no good outcome. So why invite it into your life? You know what I mean? Like,
If I ever told some shark stories dealing with animals on air, I don't know.
No.
So I have quite a few experiences with sharks. First off, San Clemente Island is in between. You got L.A.
Did you choke one out? You choked one out, didn't you?
You got Santa Catalina, and then you got San Clemente, right?
right.
Well, in SEAL training, you go out there for a month and you do all sorts of land warfare. You do all the water explosives and stuff like that, right? Blowing up, just dumping explosives in the water is commonly referred to as DuPont fishing. Big in the South, right? Well, if you ever watched Doc Hollywood, hey, be careful because the guy had gotten a hook stuck in. He's like, oh, don't worry, Doc, we're not using hooks. And all of a sudden, fish all come to the surface, right? Well, one of the things we have to do is it's old World War II skill, and this is about your desire to want to get something done underwater. And it's the old loading obstacles. In World War II, they used to plant obstacles in the water so it would catch the landing craft before they could land, right? So the whole genesis of the SEAL program, combat demolition divers in World War II, were to set explosives and blow everything up on the beach so the landing craft could make it there safely. You still do this breath holding, right? And yes, we do have dive rigs and everything where you could go down and just breathe, but you do this breath holding, and it's a rite of passage. And so you go set this whole thing up. There's a process to doing it. Then you back out, and then boom, the whole beach blows up. Well, after that, you have to go back and we have to do another beach survey to make sure that all of that stuff got exploded so that now the legitimate landing craft that want to come to the beach can come to the beach. You get on there's a big line every 25 meters. There's a little bunting knot, and there's a guy every 25 meters. And I'm out at the end because I'm probably the worst runner in the class that passes, I'm the best swimmer in the class. So I'm out there just kicking, keeping this line taut. And all of a sudden, I'm out 13 people out, 14 people out, and you hear somebody go, shark. And it goes, shark, 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 all the way into the thing. The instructor's like, what kind? What kind? And he comes out, what kind? What kind? And the guy in front of me is one of my best friends, and we were together for a long time in the community. He's like, what kind? I don't care. And he gets off the line and he starts swimming in. Well, everybody just takes off swimming in. I'm on the end of this line like chum. I've literally, and they're rolling the lineup, and I've got to stay there and get as big as I can so that we can fit all that 1,500 feet of line onto there. Yeah, that's all I'm thinking of is like, and they're like, yeah, we don't know what kind of shark it is. And here I am just bobbing all the way back in. And my other great shark story is this. I was down in Panama for Just Cause. The Special Warfare Community is tasked to go get the Panama Canal Commission island back. It's where all the boats have to check in, ships in. It's how they control traffic on the Pacific side. Right next to it is one of Noriega's beach houses on another island that the thought was if somebody's on there, they can shoot at the helicopters that are going to drop the guys off from that island to the next. So we're going to go take that island. We're trying to find a place to land the rubber boats. And so my buddy and I get out, and we're swimming around this little island. It's not that big. Right? It's actually a little peninsula, but it's a little access road that goes out to an island. We swim all the way around it, and it's all rocky and stuff like that. For those of you who don't know, the one thing that seals don't want to do is have another human touch them in the water. Like kicking me and bothering me while I'm doing what I'm doing is is agitating to me. And I look at my buddy and I'm like, Randy, stop effing touching me in the water. Right? Because he'd say the same thing to me. Like, just stay away from me, leave me alone. And he's like, dude, I'm not touching you. I'm like, oh yeah, we're joking. All of a sudden, like, he's like, dude, stop kicking me. And we both kind of turn into each other, and we see this big dorsal fin swimming away. And I don't know whether it's a dolphin or whatever it is, but it's, it is pitch black out and backlit by the city. And all of a sudden, that place right there, 30 yards away, became the best place to land. Right? In the time we're on the island doing what we're doing, we come back to Exville to get out of there. The tide had dropped down so much. The boats were like all in these rock crevices and everything. And it became this giant problem to get it out. Like, why'd you pick here? And for the longest time, we never told anybody. And it was like, hey, this was just the place. How could we tell what was underneath there? We got up there and where we were at was fine. But it was literally like both of us looked and we're like, yep, it is time to get to land right now. And yep. For the most part, the big animals don't want to mess with you.
No.
Right? They want to mess with you. Like snakes are the same way. Like, why do people, when they see a snake, have to walk up to it, want to touch it? Right? That's how animals get bit, because it's a curiosity and they have no built-in fear or respect. In that case, I don't call it fear. It's a respect mechanism.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
You're not afraid of a cougar. You respect the cougar's ability to close distance faster than you can get away.
Yeah.
And how can I make a decision?
Or faster to get my knife or gun out to where I could take aim and know that I'm going to take it down.
Yeah, and
right.
And how am I going to aim simultaneously while I'm filling up my diaper?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. There's a lot of things going on there. Like and that's and then that's where other people get hurt, right? Because you start taking wild shots, runs, and everything like that, right?
Right.
I think that's not an irrational fear.
See, I'm pretty sure that
being at the zoo is pushing it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the real reason why you have an issue with the sharks is because that's the only thing that Crocodile Dundee couldn't get that shark to do something, but he was able to do it with all the other animals.
No, listen, man. Like, if I'm hiking through the woods or running and there's a big bear in the path, pretty well established ways to interact with that bear, which give you a high chance of walking away okay. Yeah, I'll make yourself big and tall. They get scared and they'll run away, because most animals that aren't sick don't want conflict. They'll avoid it at all costs because it's too dangerous. It's too costly. And so that's what I mean. Like a dog, same thing, right? Unless it has rabies or it's sick, chances are I can scare it away before it even gets close to me. I don't think I can outrun it. I'm not like stupid. You know what I mean? I'm not being naive about this. It's in my space of operation. I can deal with these things. Sharks in the water, I can't deal with very well because I don't swim very well. Cougars and big cats that are hunting me from above or an ambush, I can't deal with really well. So I don't put myself in a situation, if I can avoid it, to have to deal with that shit. You know why I don't get bit by like black widow spiders? Because I don't go walking through fucking spider webs. That's why. When I see a spider web, I don't walk through it, man. Simple.
Be honest. If you saw a bear, Jason, you're gonna get out and you're gonna start doing the haka dance, right?
No, I'd probably try to do
it. I tell you what, if you've never seen that in person,
it's amazing.
It is
amazing.
Like the All Blacks rugby team.
Yeah,
those are the most, without the haka dance, that's the most intimidating sports team on the planet, right? They're just big, thick, strapping dudes. They want to hurt you bad with little or no equipment on.
Yeah.
And then they get after you with the haka beforehand. You go warm up, you watch the haka, you go back, you change your diaper, and you come back out and take your ass whooping and go home.
Yeah, right.
The most amazing haka I've ever seen was for a New Zealand SAS guy. Had gotten killed in combat, and they bring the casket to the lads. And the lads, as that's approaching, it gives me goosebumps just to think about it. They start doing the haka as he's showing up. And it's a specific haka for what region of the islands, that he's a Pacific Islander. Yes, he's a proud New Zealander, but he's also a proud Pacific Islander. And it was some small island. And they had like the New Zealand SAS has their own specific haka just for the SAS. And this haka, they all had to learn because it was specific to his island. And when you listen to his family talk about it, they were almost like they were so proud that they learned how to do it, but they were almost sad that they didn't do the SAS haka because of how much pride he took in being an SAS member. Right? And it's not just yes, there's intimidation there, but it's used for so many things. And the lineage of the haka is the lineage of respect.
Yeah.
Right? And I think when all of the stuff we're talking about today with animals and phylums and all the animal kingdom is about respect. Right? If you respect other things and other beings, your life's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you start disrespecting things and like the forces of nature and stuff like that, yes. Do people, and I'm one of them, periodically want to go out and Lieutenant Dan myself to a boat while it's in big seas and go, yeah, I did that. I lived through that.
Sure.
Right? But by the same token, if you have any self-preservation, you're doing it, but you're doing it in a manner that's respectful of Mother Nature, where you're pushing your own limits without Mother Nature you're not saying, hey, Mother Nature, please slap me down and remind me of where I'm at.
Right.
You're saying, how far can I go? And I didn't get slapped down today, so I might be able to go a little bit farther. But I need to go get more training. I need to get more respect, right? And I think when we talk about life lessons, it's always about respecting the other side of the argument. And if you're messing with animals, you can't. They don't have opposable thumbs, and you can't reason with them. Sometimes you just have to understand who they are and what's important to them. Right. And most of the time, what's important to an animal is the same thing that's important to me. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to cross your path. I'm purposely not trying to bang into you in life.
Right. Exactly.
And if I do, I want to be able to have a reasonable conversation with you. And guess what? I can't have a reasonable conversation with a big animal sometimes because I don't know just like humans. Like when you walk into a room and somebody wants to get argumentative with you right out of the box, why do they do that? Right? Well, you don't know because you don't know what they did just before they got there.
Right.
What's affecting their life. And that with animals and everything like that, it's the same thing. We're better at dealing with Mother Nature. Why? Because we got satellites everywhere. We can see the weather coming. Right? Disasters of the hurricane of like 1905 in Florida that basically just made it a parking lot. Doesn't happen. Earthquakes are the same way. Right? We're not going to slow down an earthquake, but we can mitigate damage because we can tell people to go F off for a while and go somewhere else where it isn't.
See, and I think that's it. It's restoring or manipulating, controlling balance, and where that balance is shifting, in trying to create harmony between these components. And when I think about applying technology to the farm or to the animals, we're talking about like even the contact lenses, right? That's what you're doing. You understand the danger in keeping these things close together and trying to get them to the point where they can go out and live. And so you try to control it and bring balance to it. And
I think it comes down to this. You're asking something of those chickens. You're saying, hey, we want you to lay eggs and we want to be able to eat them. We don't want you to get too grumpy about the fact we're going to take them all. Right?
Yeah, right.
So you're asking something from that. Well, how does life work? If I want you to help me, right, let's make this mutually beneficial to everybody. Right. And so for the privilege of taking their eggs, your responsibility is to make sure they don't get eaten every day.
Right.
Right. And not in my mind.
Until you're ready to eat them.
Right. Well, not from a financial status or anything else. Right.
No,
it's just, hey, we're making an agreement.
Yep.
Right? Whether, I know they can't grab a little pen and sign it, but those are those moral and social agreements with people. Like we do it all the time. Right. My grandfather's time and probably earlier, a handshake was your word, right? You shook somebody's hand, right? What's the genesis of the handshake as a friendly gesture?
Right.
Well, it's to show you don't have any weapons.
Correct. right? Mm-hmm. It's to say that I'm not a threat to you, right? What are you doing when you're dealing with animals? You're trying to give them that metaphorical handshake. And unless you understand that, how can you do that, right?
Right.
When we falter as people, we do that because we don't look across the thing and say, hey, what do I have to do to show you that I'm not threatening to you, right? Or unarmed, right? And choose your thing. Well, what am I thinking? Well, you think about it, you go out and mess with animals, it's that old thing. It's like you could probably, all of these people that go out and do harm to adults, like when they get to be older, and mass shooters or people that do adverse things to the human race, a lot of it you can trace back, they were mean to animals when they were kids.
Yeah.
Right. Because
it's a hallmark sign.
They never tried to show that other living organism that they weren't armed. And I don't mean like gun, but that their intent was to be unarmed.
Right.
Right. And I think that's, when you get down to it, it's like, hey, what level of respect am I willing to show anything that I come in contact with?
That's right. Yeah. Right? No, I think it's beautifully well said, man. Really. Oh, the message for today. Respect.
And on that note,
any final comments, Dan?
Well, I was just thinking as we were talking about the handshake, as to how it all, how the progressed to the handshake. But even in martial arts, their greeting was, depending on which ones was, either both hands, this, but the bow also to show, look, I'm now also bowing, but you never not look I, as Mr. Miyagi would say, because if the other person wasn't as honorable, you still had a moment to be able to still defend yourself. But you were first showing, deference in that I am unarmed and I'm coming in peace, that communication of the hands out and essentially open, because they didn't necessarily handshake then. It was about, their greeting was still about, I'm unarmed, I'm not a threat.
That's the salute, right? That's a salute. That's why, that's why the British, it starts like this, because showing junior people are showing senior people that I'm unarmed and I'm not a threat to you.
Yeah.
I'm not a threat to your officerness.
Right. And each of those, and so then each of those things, as it just progressed, it all came back down to showing respect, showing, honorable intentions. And I think, unfortunately, a lot in our society has lost that honorable intention.
Well, I don't think it's lost. I think it's a transference of emotion to one of selfishness, that if you respect me, I'll respect you, rather than saying, I'm going to respect you even if you disrespect me. That's difficult, right? That's the free speech argument in the US. Free speech is hard, right? You have to be willing to sit there and listen to somebody say something that you would stand and shout at the top of your lungs against for the rest of your life. It's a great old movie line, right?
Yeah.
But that's what makes it difficult. And respect is really hard that way. Right? When somebody gets in the middle of the room and ultimately disrespects you in whatever you find to be disrespectful, right? But you don't have the right not to be offended or not to be disrespected. You have the right to react in a fashion that's consistent with what you believe to be good behavior.
Right.
Right? If you do that, you're winning. I know it might not feel like winning while you're in the moment, but that's ultimately how you're winning, because you're saying, hey, I understand you. I don't agree with you. I think what you're doing is could be reprehensible, or however you want to articulate that, how you feel at the moment. But it doesn't mean I'm going to give in to my base temptation and get back at you, right? Because you do that out in the wild of the world, those animals are going to be like, okay, great. We don't want to respect each other. I'm going to go tiger, right? I'm done, right? I've checked the block. I tried to get away. I tried to distance myself, stay out of you stay out of my comfort circle, and now you're in it and you don't want to respect me. This is where it's going to go. Well, as humans, we largely now do the same thing. But I think a lot of it is, listen to me, accept everything I have to say. And if you do, then I'll be your friend. Then I'll respect you. Not going, hey, I don't agree with you, but that's not a crazy argument. I just happen to think we should be doing things other ways. Right?
Well, and maybe we get into this in a future show, but I even find the choice of semantics interesting, because what's interesting to me, the language isn't "you're my friend." It's actually turned into, very specifically, "you're an ally." Because if you're not an ally, you're the enemy, right? And you're immediately adversarializing people. And Like put it back in the animal kingdom, like you were just saying. The minute.
So would the enemy of your enemy then be your ally or your friend?
I knew it's Dan. I swear to God, we've got to have a separate thing where Dan can't see it, and I can just type shit Dan's going to say. That's going to be the name of the segment. Responses from Dan, and we'll let viewers. We'll make it a contest.
You can vote. We'll
make This Life in Tech T-shirts, and if they can respond with it, they get a T-shirt.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Or it's to compete against me and how quickly I can know what Dan's going to say. That's actually just a testament to how much time all of us have spent together.
Oh
yeah. All right, my friends. Well,
you got chickens to wrangle.
Yeah. Mrs. Pittman and our daughter went over there a little bit ago. So I'll probably walk over and see what they're up to, see how the chickens are doing. I think today is move the coop day. So
how about that? Moving on up.
Yeah, man. Get the tractor out, hook it up, drive it a few feet down the pasture.
As always, please enjoy your bucolic adventures.
Oh, man. I'll try to stay away from these damn cougars.
Well, for me, I'm going to be checking on the bitters because I made bitters last weekend. So I'm going to see how they wind up turning out. If they're ready.
Maybe we should talk about tech and like what you're getting into with brewing and distilling and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm all down.
Right. Cool.
Well, I'm not distilling anything until I'm legally licensed in terms of alcohol.
Well,
why would you?
Why
would you?
Right.
Law and order all the time, aren't you, Dave?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've read about it.
Well, of course, right here. Which I got to tell you, if you ever get an opportunity to try, so this is the oldest distillery in the United States, right out there in Kings County, Brooklyn, New York. They have the most unassuming label on their single malt American whiskey, and it is tasty.
Very cool.
It is really good. And it looks
next week, show the fans the label and everything so they can have the visual going up to get it.
Yeah. Well, they may even see it before then.
Very well then.
Right on.
All right, my friend.
Have a great weekend. Talk to you next week.
Out.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.